It's so good to be here. We're grateful to you all for coming out. Speak louder, okay. First, did everyone get one of the newsletters, Space Alert? Anybody that didn't get one of those? Raise your hand if you didn't. So, okay, there's more back there. All right, very good. That's our newsletter. We publish it twice a year. This is the 26th year of the Global Network, and it was created in order to build an international consciousness around the space issue, because we saw that space was becoming dominant in terms of the U.S. military. Everything the Pentagon does today, whether it's troops on the ground, in tanks, in ships, in planes, everything they do is coordinated and directed by military satellites. And as these satellites orbit the Earth, they send their signals just below the Earth as they're passing particular places. So in order to kind of string this whole thing together in a global way, the U.S. has built what are called downlink stations around the planet. So in places like Yorkshire, where Menwith Hill and Fylingdales are located, and in places in many other countries, there are these U.S. downlink facilities that communicate with the satellites and relay in real time spy information and targeting information, all these other drone operations. It's all done this way now. And so around the planet then, we discovered as we began traveling that there were peace groups in these local communities that didn't want their community to be part of the U.S. Star Wars system. So these organizations became the membership of the Global Network. And so every year we hold a conference, international conference, in a different country, close to a place that has a role in this mission. This year we're meeting in Oxford because right nearby is Croughton. And on page 3, there's a little bit of an article about Croughton, which is being expanded dramatically as a key U.S. surveillance relay, military relay information center. And so we're meeting there. Last year we met in Alabama. The year before, let's see, where did we meet the year? India. And so anyway, we've met all over the place over the years. And trying to help expand people's consciousness. How many of you heard that just yesterday Trump announced that he wants to create a space force? Any of you hear that in the news? Basically, the idea is that the aerospace industry sees space as a massive new market for profit because of, you know, when you launch a satellite, the satellites cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Now and then they blow up on launch. You have to start all over again. The rockets that launch them, they cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a very expensive operation. And then after you get them up there, you've got to build these downlink stations. You have to staff them. So it's massive expenditures. So the industry says, oh, we want to keep this thing going. And what's happening now is they say that it will be the largest industrial project. We call it, you know, Star Wars. Will be the largest industrial project in the history of the planet Earth. I like to call it pyramids to the heavens. And so it's so expensive that the U.S. can't pay for it by itself. And so that's one of the top jobs of the Pentagon today, is to go around the world and get allies to join the system. That's why you hear a lot of pressure on NATO right now. You need to increase your annual country spending on NATO, go from 2% to 3% or 4%, because the U.S. is finding it hard to pay for all of this, wants NATO to put in more money, but always everything has to be interoperable. All the technologies that NATO countries purchase to be part of this whole space warfare program has to be interoperable. But guess who controls the system? The United States. So the U.S. is in charge of the tip of the spear, but having now other countries around the world help pay for it. So it's a real scam. And in our country, they've identified, they said, we've got to come up with a dedicated funding source to pay for all of this. And they've identified what they call the entitlement programs that officially are Social Security, That's the retirement program for people that they pay into all their working lives. Medicare, which is a elderly health care program, very small, not very large, but still something. And Medicaid, which is a small program for poor people and children. So these are the programs they now want to completely shut down and move those funds into paying for this expanding program. Now we see this Space Force that Trump wants to do. So we feel quite certain that this is an extremely important issue that we need to help bring to people of the world, and that's why we're out and about holding these events. And then every year in October we have a week that we call Keep Space for Peace Week, and we ask groups all over the world during that week to hold some kind of local event that helps raise the consciousness in your particular community, even if you don't have a space facility nearby. But you know, in your case, Faslane, how do these, when they launch a Trident from a submarine, how is a Trident directed to their target? By space technology, by satellites, by these downlink stations. So everything that is done now with the military is coordinated with this kind of technology. So I'll stop there. We'll each make short statements, and then we want to hear your questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bruce.
Want me to go next? Huh?
Yeah, I'd like to go.
Would you like to go?
So you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello everybody, thanks for coming. This is great. My name is Will Griffin. To sum up my biography just real quick, I'm an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran turned anti-war activist. Thank you. It was a tough ride, but I'm here. I was born on a U.S. military base overseas in a country that technically doesn't exist, West Germany, Nuremberg Army Hospital, the height of the Cold War. After 3 years there, I moved to South Korea, another country torn by war with U.S. influence. I traveled around, lived in military bases, in or near military bases around the U.S., and at age 19, in 2004, I joined the military, became a paratrooper in the Army. I was in Iraq when President Bush announced the surge, 2007. I was in Afghanistan when President Obama announced the surge in 2009. I got the best of both worlds. And I got out in 2010. Now, how did I change? Because I was born on a military base. By the way, both my parents were in the U.S. Army. Even my mother, who is from South Korea, did 5 years in the U.S. Army. My father, who is a white guy from Georgia, did 22 years, retiree. So when I get out of the military in 2010 and I come home, I'm questioning the wars. Because my chain of command, my military leaders are not giving me the straight answers that I want. And then I come home and I have parents who are saying, we need to be there. And I'm their only son, and I'm the only one who's actually been in a combat zone, and I'm telling them it's not working out. And I had this huge personal conflict that I had. Stand with my parents, or stand on the moral side of this war, and stand out and speak out and say that this is wrong. And these are two things that I think a lot of people take for granted, is time off and access to the internet. Look, we have a device that fits inside of our pocket that we can ask almost any question that we want and it will give us the answer. Yet we look at it for cat pictures most of the time. How do you explain that to someone 100 years ago, that you have this device that you can ask questions, right? And the time off. When I got out, I used my GI Bill to go to college, and I did not work. I got paid to go to college, and I studied U.S. foreign policy, and I was determined to find out, because I did one of the, I think, most important things that I think anybody can do, but especially veterans of war, is to admit to themselves that we had a small part in this, but we had no idea what we were participating in. I sure as hell didn't. I'm just an enlisted guy, a little part of the war, and I admitted to myself that I participated in destroying in 2 entire countries with some of the richest culture and history in the world, right? And not to mention, when I go over there, I look more like them than the people in U.S. military uniforms, right?
Yes, of course.
So now, you know, I graduated college in 2014, and I joined Veterans for Peace, And it led me to the Global Network. I work with About Face. I work with Code Pink, Women Against the War. I work with so many organizations as much as possible. One of the things I noticed was lacking was a lot of media content. That's, social media is really, it is a problem, but you can actually learn from it and connect with it as well. So I'm a filmmaker now, and I created what is called the Peace Report. I've gotten over 40 million views. I've got over 125,000 followers on Facebook, which shows me that people are tired of 17 years of war. And I say some pretty radical stuff in my videos.
Good.
America is the empire right now. And I've never heard of a good empire.
It always was.
Never heard of a good empire.
Neither
Right.
has Scotland.
Yeah. And
You're welcome here.
And as a millennial, we don't have much of a future. We are facing two existential crises that is being pushed mainly by militarism all around the world. That's nuclear weapons and climate change, tied up with other multiple crises that we're going through: economic, political, environmental. They're all tied together, right? And I think America is falling. It's going to fall hard. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that's what I'm trying to prepare people through my videos, through my activism, through my organizing. And the Global Network is an excellent organization that ties the whole thing together: space, cyberspace, land, air, sea. It's all connected. And that's what I do now. And in America, veterans have a powerful voice in that culture. And I believe Martin Luther King said it perfectly. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. And I have to speak up, because to this day we are dropping bombs on innocent people, and I'm paying for it through my tax dollars. All Americans are paying it through their tax dollars. And this mess needs to end. And coming to the Global Network and meeting with folks like you is what gives me hope. As a suicidal veteran, there's a lot of us. You have a higher chance of blowing off your own head than you do dying by the hands of some extreme fundamentalists overseas, which I wouldn't say they're our enemies. Our enemies are the ones who sit on the CEOs, the boards, the shareholders, the bankers, the politicians, and they live right next door to me in my own home country. Those are my enemies right now. So that's what I try to do, is educate people and try to focus people focus their anger in the right direction. And it's not the people in the Middle East. I guarantee you that. Thank you.
Maybe Beth?
So my name is Mary Beth Sullivan. I live in Bath, Maine, with Bruce Gagnon, and I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker for 36 years, and I found my social work home about maybe 13 years ago in Portland, Maine, working with people who are experiencing problems with homelessness, housing, hunger, and poverty. So imagine that. The richest country in the world, and the person in the room that has job security is the one who's working with people that are having problems with homelessness, hunger, and poverty. The community of people that I connect with on a daily basis suffer deeply. They know violence. They've experienced violence as children. Some of them have significant mental health issues. Some of them have significant addiction issues. Many of them just have a lot of bad luck. And what they need is connection and community, and a connection to the incredible resilience that exists. It's such a joyful experience to be in connection with people who are living day to day, supporting each other to survive a hellish experience and move beyond that experience. I'm grateful to work for an agency that's quite progressive and understands that it's not complicated to solve the problem of homelessness. Housing's not so hard, but many of our folks need a lot of support in that effort. So our agency also has built housing for people that are experiencing these issues. So I also live in the town of Bath, with where the United States builds naval destroyers. General Dynamics owns a small shipyard in our community. It's called Bath Iron Works, and it has built ships, naval destroyers that are parked in many countries around the world. It was ships made in Bath were active in the Shock and Awe campaign, and we know people who have survived that experience and struggle with the consequences of it. So we spend a lot of our time demonstrating in front of Bath Iron Works and holding out a vision that says, as long as we hold on to this war economy in the United States, as long as weapons is our #1 industrial export, where the world is in trouble. And what we need to be doing in our communities is building consumer products that take us to a place of survival for the 21st century. It's clear that climate change is the real problem in this century, and that what we need to be doing in our home community is to stop building weapons of destruction and to start building an alternative energy infrastructure that will help all of us survive the 21st century. So we talk a lot about conversion in our home community, and we talk a lot about General Dynamics and its wealth and its dominance, and what we learn is how cowardice so many politicians are. They know the truth, they know what needs to be done, and they don't have what it takes, the moral backbone, to stand up and speak the truth that says, yes, it's time for us to look forward and plan another way. But their recalcitrance does not diminish our efforts a bit. We move forward, we speak the truth, and we carry on. And we're inspired by some of the same work that happens here in your communities. So that's my talk.